Hello, I'm Alison Evans, and I am going to be showing you today how to make hand-sewn fancy plants. So I'll show you a couple of plants that I have made. This is for Artcore Crafternoon, and in case you missed the first bit, we're making hand-sewn fancy plants today. A couple of weeks ago we did paper fancy plants, and today we're going to have a go at making the fabric ones using really simple embroidery techniques. So I've just used on this one, I've just got a very simple blanket stitch, which I'll hold it to the screen. I don't know if you can see that. And then a very simple stem stitch going down the middle. And the fabric I've used, which you can use whatever fabric you've got knocking around really, but felt is good because it doesn't fray. So we've got the felt on the top, and then on the bottom of that one, you can see that there's a vintage fabric. And this one is a similar one. This one is a different fabric. This one's a vintage fabric as well, and a blue felt, but again I've used the blanket stitch around the edge. And I've got this one which I've in the process of making. This one's slightly different. I've used just a chain stitch on that one, but you could also use a back stitch as well. So that I'll show you later how we put this one together. So what we'll start with, the first thing that you need to do is find some suitable fabric. So as I say, you can use whatever fabric that you want, and you need to start cutting out leaf shapes. So just normal scissors, fabric. Now what you need to remember to do is to put your fabric back to back. So when you cut out your leaf shape, the leaf's the same on both sides. So if you cut it like that, then it would be the wrong way on. So you need to cut it with the fabric so you can see the right side of the fabric on both sides. And so what you need to do is cut about 6 leaf shapes, the same as we did with the paper ones, between about sort of 12 centimetres up to sort of 22 centimetres long. So choose your sort of shape that you like. You can draw it out if you want. You could draw a paper pattern. I'm just going to show you, because we haven't got that long, cutting it just like this. So cutting a nice leafy type shape. And you need to do this, like I say, 6 times to get your leaf shape. So there's a leafy shape cut out. So you need 6 of those. I've got a little bit sticking out there, so I'm going to cut that bit off because you want it to be nice and smooth. So that's a leaf shape that we're cutting out. The other thing you can do, if you're lucky enough to have some of these interesting things like crocodile teeth, these are called pinking shears, and I actually got these from Oxfam for £1, so I was very lucky with these. If you have got these, you can cut out a nice zigzag edge on your leaf like this. So they cut out like that and make a nice zigzag edge, which will stop the fabric from fraying. So that's that one. So we're going to use some very simple embroidery techniques, which I have taken from a book that I've had since I was a brownie. I think I got this book when I was doing my brownies embroidery badge. So it's a very, very old book, but it shows simple ways of doing stitches. I'll just put it here so you can see the simple stitches that we're going to be using. So what I'll do when the video's finished, I'll post some images to show you how to do the stitches if you're struggling. But I am going to show you now how to sew some of the simple stitches. So I think we'll start with doing a blanket stitch. What I've done here I've used embroidery thread, and I've used 3 strands of embroidery thread. I've actually pre-threaded the needle because I thought, if I don't, you're going to be watching me threading needles all afternoon because my eyesight's not that good. So I have pre-threaded this needle. But when you get embroidery thread, which is here, I'll just show you this, find the end of it. It's actually split into 6 strands. So ideally for this, you want 3 strands of embroidery thread. So it's going to be quite difficult to show you, but it splits up. The embroidery thread split up. I think if you're an expert at embroidery, you'll already know this, and I'm not an expert at embroidery. I am a very basic embroiderer. So you need to split the thread from 6 threads to 3 threads. And it does tend to knot up, so you just need to, if you just run your finger down the middle, and then that'll split it. It twizzles a bit, look, so you need to get all the twists out of it. And then that is ready for sewing. Put that one over there. That one there. So this isn't, I've picked a red one out here, but I think for this fabric we need to choose a different colour for doing around the edge. So if you wanted to, you could pin the 2 sides together, but I'm just going to hold it because I'm just showing you what we're doing here. So what colour shall we choose? So it's red. I think probably yellow will show up well, so you need to choose a thread that shows up really well, so you get a nice contrast like on there, and you can actually see the stitching. So we're going to do a yellow here. So you need to put a little knot in the end of your thread. So that's there. And then I'm going to show you how to do a blanket stitch on this. So I'm going to go in the middle of the fabric. So that's in between the 2 layers, so the knot's not seen. And then you pull it through. It's quite difficult to show. Let's move that wire out of the way. It's a really simple stitch. So you push the needle through, and then you wrap the thread round and pull it through. And then again. So you're going to push the needle into here, wrap the thread round and pull it through. It's one of the first embroidery stitches that I learned from my little book here. And what's really good about the blanket stitch is it gives you a nice edge to your 2 fabrics. What you need to do is make sure that the needle goes through both of the fabrics. So you pull that through. And you can see it's beginning to form a nice edge along here. We're going to do this all the way around. So it does take a little bit longer than the sticking and gluing with the paper plants, but you get a nice finish to it, and it's nice to have fabric plants. So going through and then wrapping it round. So you've got 6 different leaves that you can do this. You can use the same technique, same stitch on each leaf. And what I'll do on this leaf, I'll show you a few different techniques, but we'll go so far. So we're going through the 2 layers, wrapping it round. I think if there's any expert embroiderers watching this, it's a very simple technique, but it's effective. So the edge there, and through again, and around like that. You can do, if you want, you can do a much smaller stitch, which I've used on these. It's a smaller stitch, but I'm just showing you this for quickness, really. So then in through the fabric, wrap it round, pull it through. And then I'll show you, if I get to the end, I'll show you what we do at the end, because we'll need to just shape the end so that we can get the stitching going through nice and neatly at the end. So you can use any fabric at all. Felt is good because, like I say, it doesn't fray. But, you know, with doing the edge in blanket stitch, you can actually use anything. Probably firmer fabrics rather than silky fabrics, because the plant would be a bit floppy. But we are going to put wire in it later. So that's going around here. I won't do this all the way around because that'll take us a long time. I don't know, can you see how it's coming along? Just here. Into a knot. That's it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this leaf a bit shorter. So what I'm going to do, because the end, I've done a pointy end, so it's not very easy to do a blanket stitch around a pointy end. So I'm just going to round the end of the leaf off like this. As you can see, that's what we've done here, and then the stitch goes round easier. So just taking it round the end of the leaf. Very big blanket stitch, but you can see you sort of take it around the edge, you put the stitch closer together at the bottom here, and then pull it through, and then put it a bit closer together like that. And take it through. So that's the blanket stitch. I won't take it all the way around, I'll finish it here, and then I'll show you some other techniques. So that's how that leaf works out. So when it's all the way around, here's one I made earlier. That's the blanket stitch and all the way around that one. So what I'll do, I'll show you a different stitch now. So we'll finish that one off. But you would carry on so it goes all the way around the leaf. And I'll show you what I've done here, which, put that one back there. That one has got a chain stitch going all the way around it, which is another very simple stitch from my brownie days. I'll show you that one. So let's have a look. I've got this little leaf here, so I'll show you on that one. I'll use the purple thread, I think, because I've got, yes, it's got purple in it. See if I can remember how to do a chain stitch. I do have to keep referring to my little book because, as I say, I'm not an expert embroiderer. So we're going to do a chain stitch. So we'll start again, go in between the fabric like that, so that when you pull it through, the knot's hidden. And then I'm going to wrap it round in a little loop, if I can remember this, and then through like that. So you're wrapping it round, and it'll make a little chain loop like that. So you go back into the loop, so you're going back in through that little loop, and then it's like a little running stitch coming out. I'm going to pull that through and it will form a chain, and on the back it's just like a little running stitch. So again, I'm going to go through, loop it round. And again, it's nice to use a contrasting colour. So depending on what colour fabric you've got, you can choose a nice contrast. I like using a plain colour on one side, like the felt plain colour, and then a nice fancy fabric on the other. So you get a really good fancy plant. If you wanted to, you could try and make a more realistic plant and just use green, like different shades of green. I think that might work quite nicely. I've got a plant that I made here. This one. That one's a bit more realistic. This is one that I made on the sewing machine. So that one's using different shades of green. Looks as if it needs a bit of water, actually. Put that one back there. So carry on with your chain stitch. Can you see the little chain forming around the edge? I'll hold it together. Just pull it through. If you want, you could just practice the stitches before starting on your plant. But they're all quite simple. So that's the chain stitch. With the chain stitch one, you can leave the point at the end because you can just take the chain up into the point. So I shall show you that. Nearly at the point now. Probably another 4 stitches. Make sure it's stuck together. Make sure that you've got the 2 pieces and that you're going through the back as well with your needle. So it gets a bit more tricky as you get to the point. So into the point near it. One more. Have to be careful it doesn't wrap around it like that. Pull it through. So this one's going to go up into the point. There. So that's into the point. I'm going to do a little stitch to hold it down. And start again. So wrapping it round. You can see on the back it's just a little, it's not particularly neat running stitch you get on the back of a chain stitch. But it's fine because that's the back of the plant. So just do one more little chain stitch here to show you around that corner. And then I'm going to do a back stitch, which is another way of doing it. So back stitch, you're just coming back onto yourself. So it's like a running stitch. So you're just going out and then you're going back in where you came out, like this. So, and if you're an expert embroiderer, you could use all sorts of fancy stitches. Most of my plants I've made on the sewing machine, where I use an overlocker for the edging. But with the lockdown, I was struggling. I didn't have my sewing machine, so That's when I came up with the idea of making these hand sewn plants. So I'll just go back down here and then I'll show you the way to decorate down the centre. I'm going to go quickly back stitching, so it's just in and out, back on yourself. So it's just in and out, following that back down here. I'm doing quite big stitches because I'm going to run out of time. So those are the 3 stitches that I use. I use the chain stitch, which is what I've used on this one, and the back stitch, which I don't think I've got any. No, so the back stitch is another one that you can use. Some of the plants are in Artcore, the first ones that I made. So nearly there. So that gives you a sort of straight line along the back. So let's finish this one off and then we can do some decorating. So that's that one finished off. So that one we've got chain stitch down one side and then back stitch down the other. So I'll finish that one off and then choose a different colour to decorate down the middle of the leaf. So cut that one off. Put that one there. So what other colours have I got? So I think I'll use, so we're going to decorate this one. So what we'll choose is probably a blue, and we're going to do a stem stitch down the middle like this, if I can remember how to do it, so that you've got a nice stem down the middle. So I'll choose blue because we haven't got any blue on that one and it'll show up. So again, put a little knot in the end. Which you can make by wrapping it around your finger and then twiddling it off like that, and that makes a knot. So, which one are we doing? Let's do down this one. Let's do blue down here. So I'm going to go in at the end. And this stitch is actually very similar to the blanket stitch. So but it's flat. So you're sort of going in here and making like a little, same as the blanket stitch, a little loop like that. And then you're going over to the other side and doing the same again, taking it down the centre. Like that. So this is how you do stem stitch. This is really easy. Now what I'm trying to do is not go through on this one. I'm just doing it through the top layer. So like this. So work your way down. Make sure that the thread's underneath the needle and pull it through. And then again at this side. And I'm not going through so it's not on the back, it's just the top of the leaf. But you can use, I mean, if you like embroidery, you've probably got lots of other stitches that you can use for doing this. I think I need to learn a few more stitches. So this one's called, it's actually called feather stitch. It's not stem stitch, it's feather stitch. So it gives a sort of feathery effect. Can you see? Which is the same as we've got on these ones here. So nearly finished this one, and then I'll show you how to make the little star patterns. So that's that one. You can make it as big or as small as you want down the stem. Getting in a knot here now. There we go. That's that one finished. So I'll just do a little stitch in the bottom to hold it tight and cut it off. So that's the stem stitch going all the way down the centre to make the leaf. And because we've not gone through the back, you haven't got any of that on the back. So it's like that. And then I'll show you how to do the little star, which is very simple. It's just a running stitch, really. I don't know if it's got a name to it, but it's just a running stitch I've done. So I'll use the red on that one. So tie a little knot in the end again, and it's always the three. Well, I find it easy working with the three strands of embroidery thread. So I'm going to go in through the end on this one so that I'm not in the back of it again. And I'm going to do, so just starting here, I'm going to go decide the size of it. And it's just basically going in and out until you've got a star shape. So one stitch, back into the centre, and make a little wheel going round, back into the centre. Again, I'm trying not to go through, I'm just going through the top layer of fabric. And then back into the centre. Out here. It's going to make a little flower. Another way you can do this is something called lazy daisy stitch, which is one that I learnt when I was a brownie many years ago. I'll show you that one next. Can you see it's beginning to form a little flower? Just keep going in and out until you've got the flower that you like. That'll do. So then I'll move it on. So I'm going to go through the middle and then move it on to where I want the next flower. So I'll do one there. So that'll be the last stitch there. And that's formed like a little flower shape, which is similar to the inside I did earlier. And I'll show you the lazy daisy stitch, and then we'll start putting it together. So that's just like the chain stitch. So you're looping it round just like you do with the chain stitch. And then just going in at the end of that. And then back through into the middle like we did with the other flower. And make a little loop around again. And it's making little petals. I hope you can see this. I think I could do with a magnifier really to show you better. So if we give this one 5 petals. So it is basically, lazy daisy stitch is the same as the chain stitch. be careful not to catch it like that. Now look, so we've got a little flower there. I'll just finish it off with a little stitch at the top. And then we'll start putting the plant together. So those are the stitches that we use. So we've done the feather stitch, we've got the chain stitch, the back stitch, and then we've got the blanket stitch on that one. And then to decorate, we've got a little flower made just with the running stitch, and the flower made the lazy daisy stitch. So the next thing to do is to start putting your plant together. It's the same technique as we did last time with the paper plants. So you need some wire. So this is the wire. So I just use it's just a garden wire, 1mm garden wire, and we'll need some pliers. So we're going to bend the end over, otherwise it'll just shoot out the top because the stitches are quite big. So bend that over like that, and then we're going to push that into the leaf between the layers, and so it's right at the top, and then you can bend your leaf lock so it then looks like a leaf. So cut it off probably about, what's that, about 10 centimeters of wire. I'm going to cut that off like that. So that's a leaf shape, and I'll do another one. So bend it over at the top so it doesn't go through. And push it into the leaf, like between the two layers of fabric. So minding your embroidery, making sure it doesn't poke out of the top, and then again about 10 centimeters, and cut it off. So I've got the leaf there. And then we're going to stick it to the wire so it doesn't come off. So what I have got here is some florist's tape, but you can use masking tape or sellotape, but I like using this, but masking tape is fine. So tear yourself a piece off, and then you're going to get your plant, your leaf, and then fold it over like this so it makes a nice leafy shape. Wrap it round, and then we're going to wrap this tape around, firstly around the fabric end, nice and tight, and then around the wire so it sticks to the wire. Round and round. Because you won't actually see it when we've planted it, so it'll go into the pot, and then we'll put the nice composty topping on it. There. So that is a finished leaf. I'm going to do the same with this one. So it's probably about 15 centimeters of tape that you need. Then pinch it together, and then start wrapping. If you wrap at the fabric end first, wrap it round. And then you've got another leaf like that. You can see. So what we're going to do next, we're going to actually pot the plant. So I'll move this out of the way. So to pot the plant, you need to get your 6 leaves together. We've got 6 here. Yeah, these are some that I made earlier. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got 6 there. And I've got a little plant pot here. So what we need to do is toilet roll, put it into your pot. So that one is a little bit tall. We don't want it to stick out like that. So we're going to cut some off the end of it. So paper scissors here. So I'm cutting about 2 centimetres off the end of that. And then you can't see that now, can you? So that's good. So what we need to do next is put the plant into the tube. So we'll get some paper, like we did with the paper plant. Some strips of paper. And we're going to put that into the tube. So to roll it up, scrunch it up. This is easier to show than the embroidery. I really think I needed a bit of a zoom to show you that embroidery. But so then we're going to wrap it around the finger like that. And push it into the tube. So you've still got a middle bit, so we're pushing it into the tube like so. You can see that. Let's do another one. And wrap it round your finger again. Push it into the tube so that you've got like a middle in the tube for sticking your plant into, like that. And then again, here's one I made earlier. So that's one that's nice and compacted with the paper all stuffed into it. I'm going to get my leaves. So what we're going to do is we're going to probably start with the smaller ones. Make a nice arrangement with the leaves. Putting them together like this. So it's like a little flower arrangement. Hold them together. Got all the stems like this. Put another one there. And then another one here. So they're all together, and then we're going to get one of the wires and start wrapping it round. So I'm going to try and make like a stem from these wires, a nice solid stem. So get another one and wrap it round. And then another one. Like this. Can you see? So it's sort of holding the plant together and forming the stem. Don't worry if it looks a bit weird at the moment, because once it's planted you can then sort it out. So wrap it round, It's getting smaller. It actually looks a bit like a root. So, and then that one, like that. So we've now got a plant with a root, and we're going to plant our root into this tube like so. Like that. And then we'll need lots of paper, like we did with the paper plant. We're going to push it into here, into the pot, and then we're going to pack the pot with more paper. So I'm stuffing the paper, so it's just newspaper. You can use any sort of pot. You can use any tin or pot or old jar that you've got around. You don't have to use one of these. And pushing that down like this. And you can use any fabric, like I say, to make the plants. You can use recycled fabric, which some of this is, the underneath pieces are. And the felt's good because it doesn't fray, but if you're using the blanket stitch, you can literally use any sort of fabric. So to get it nice and firm into the pot, I think I'll put a bit more paper in there. It's stuck together. So once you're sort of happy that it's nice and firm, you can start arranging your leaves how you want them. So I think I'm quite happy with that. So then we need to just top the plant off with whatever you want to put on the top of it. You could use gravel actually, you could use little bits of stone, you could use shredded paper like we did with the paper plants last week. So I think that's what I'm going to do with this. These plants, they've got like fake, well, it's reindeer moss in them. You can order that online, but you can also do what we did last week and just use shredded up paper. So we'll finish with just showing you how to do that. So I'm going to get the paper like this, fold it up. I can't see. So I've just folded the paper up like this, and then I'm going to cut it into tiny little shredded pieces. And it does actually look quite attractive to top the plant. But if you've got any coloured pebbles knocking about, shells even, I've got some beach shells knocking around, or little coloured beads, any sort of coloured aggregate would be fine. But this looks quite attractive. So just keep going until you've got a few bits like this. And then I'm going to scrunch it up. And it's like a little bird's nest. And I'm going to pop it around the base of the plant. I need a bit more than that. And just keep going, cutting it up like this into the shredded pieces. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask away. I think that they come up somewhere on the screen. If you need to know anything. So I think we're nearly there. Just need a bit more. You can see it looks quite attractive with the paper in it. So just put a little bit more of that around it. And if you're very creative, you could always decorate the pot as well. You could paint the pot. Just a little bit around this side, and then I think we're done. So I'll push that down there. And that is today's hand sewn fancy plant. So if you've managed to make one, it'd be really nice to see them if you've managed to follow this. So you can post it on Artcore Facebook page, I would think. So that is your finished hand sewn fancy plant. And these are the ones that I made earlier. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll be back again to show you some other techniques for making plants. So thank you again, Artcore, for letting me do this, and look forward to seeing you all and seeing your results maybe. Thank you. Goodbye.